Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to talk a bit about some of the techniques that I used to track down one of my most elusive ancestors. I wrote a blog post recently about this one, so some of you might have already read it, but for those of you who haven't, or if you just want to hear me chatting about it, in this video I'm going to go a little bit in depth with it. So it's about my great-great-grandmother and how she was so difficult. She was such a mystery. If you haven't already, please go ahead and click the subscribe button because it will update you of all of my future uploads, and it really helps out my channel when you do. Okay, let's get into it. So, my great-great-grandmother, Mary Sheehan, she was born in County Galway in 1861, and she was one of 11 children. She was the first, I'm pretty sure. And the whole rest of her family emigrated to the United States, and Mary emigrated alone to Australia, which sounds absolutely crazy. Like, why would she have done that? So that was my real first question. So she arrived in Port Adelaide in 1880 aboard the ship called Devon. And like I said, as far as I can tell, she was traveling alone. It doesn't look like she was with anyone. She was sponsored by somebody though who was already out here called William Murphy. And when she arrived, she headed straight to William Murphy's farm. And there she lived and presumably worked. So I did a bit of digging into these Murphys because I was like, why there? Like, if he sponsored her, there must be a connection. William Murphy's wife was also named Mary Sheehan, so I suppose the Sheehan connection must be there. She must have been a relative. I also suspect this because I got in contact with some of the descendants of her family who moved to America, and they said that there was an old family story that one of the siblings had gone to Australia to help a relative on their farm. So that sort of explains that one. I don't know if you can hear that, like some truck or something. So anyway, I could not find the actual connection between Mary Sheehan and the Murphys, so I can assume that they're related. I was unable to pinpoint the actual connection though. But the next piece of evidence that I have is Mary placed an ad in the newspaper, and she said that she was looking for her cousin who was in the colony called Martin Stack. And could he contact her at the farm? I don't know if she ever found out this, but when I looked into Martin Stack, it turned out that he had already died. He died about, I think, 2 years prior. He was only young, I think he was 22. So I'll never really know if she found out what became of her cousin, or if he just never replied and she just never found out. So that's really sad. All right, on to the next event. 1883, Mary's been in the colony for 3 years, and she marries my great-great-grandfather, Thomas Doyle, at Star of the Sea Church in Port Adelaide. So I know this far. I descend from their son, Michael. He's my great-grandfather. And on Michael's marriage certificate, he lists his mother as deceased. So I figured that Mary must have died quite young, or, you know, youngish anyway, prior to her son getting married in 1908. So really after her marriage and the births of, she had 3 children with Thomas Doyle. The last one died as an infant. I think he was about 1 when he died. And then Mary drops from the records. So I was looking for a death between the birth of her last child and the 1908 when Michael gets married and says that his mother was deceased. Also in 1908, Thomas Doyle, her husband, remarries another woman and says that he's a widow. So I'm very strongly looking for a death here, and I could not find one. She just disappeared. There was no death recorded, and I couldn't find her anywhere. She fell off the records. So mystery, like we all have these in our tree, right? These mystery people who just disappear. So I actually put that research aside for quite a while because I was at a dead end. It seemed like a bit of a brick wall, but eventually a little breakthrough came. I found a record from 1892. It was an admission into the destitute asylum in Adelaide. and that was Mary Doyle. She was the right person. She had the husband, Thomas Doyle, and of course he didn't go with her, it was just her. She was admitted alone, and she was pregnant. So she, her record said that she claimed the father to be a Frederick Coop, and said that he promised her money to help support her, and then he didn't come through with it. And so it seems that Mary has split from Thomas, my great-great-grandfather, and gotten together with somebody else who then disappeared. And poor Mary is obviously completely destitute and giving birth in an asylum. She was 29 years old at this point, but there were some red flags with her hospital admission. But the first thing that I assumed was this must be what's leading to her death. So this was 1892, and like I said, Michael and Thomas marry in 1908, so I was thinking that between that period, you know, she's gone downhill and she's died. There were a few, like I said, red flags though with her hospital admission. One thing is that she says that she's a widow. She says that her husband Thomas died 5 years ago, which we know is not true. He lived well past that. Now, she gave birth to her son Frederick, who she named Frederick Doyle. So Frederick, obviously after the father, Frederick Coop, but he's out of the picture, so she's named it Frederick Doyle. So Mary checks out of the asylum in late 1892, and she heads to Jamestown and the Commercial Hotel. The destitute asylum records say both mother and child went there into the care of a Mrs. Murphy who ran the Commercial Hotel. Don't get excited about the Murphy connection. There was no connection to the other Murphys as far as I could find. So she is now in Jamestown alone with her new baby, probably working at the hotel as a domestic servant or something to support herself. Once again, I'm left to looking for a death between 1892 and 1908. But once again, nothing. I can't find her. And once again, I know a lot of you will sympathize, these people who just disappear from the trees, and we just have to say, like, we assume that they died, you know, in this window, but we can't find them. Anyway, I eventually figured this one out. So one thing that I hadn't really done is dug too much into her, the father, Frederick Coop, the father of her child. And I eventually decided to do this. So Frederick Coop turned out to be the key to the whole thing. He was living in Victoria, and I decided to trace him. I thought it was a long shot because, you know, she gave birth in Adelaide to his child and he didn't seem to be in the picture. Then she went off to Jamestown, which is also in South Australia. I didn't expect him coming back, but when I looked at him, he did get married to a Mary Sheehan, and that was my Mary. So my problem was that I was looking the whole time for a death of a Mary Doyle, and Mary Doyle didn't die. Mary Doyle changed her name back to Sheehan, obviously not legally, and got married again. So it's a crime. Obviously, you're not allowed to marry two people at the same time, but she's gone to a different state. She's gone back to her maiden name, and she's gotten married again, calling herself a spinster. Frederick, the baby that was born, is then raised as Frederick Coop. His name is changed, and they have several more children, and she lives a pretty long life out in Victoria. Now obviously she has lied on the records, and so have her family. So there's been multiple lies, and that's what made her so hard to track down. And I know, you know, this is what happens with other people too, but it's why records aren't completely infallible. Like, people think you get a record and you get the information off it, that's, you know, the truth, but it's not necessarily. So Michael Doyle, my great-grandfather, he said that his mother was dead in 1908. Perhaps he was telling the truth in the sense that perhaps he didn't know. Mary left the family, or whatever happened between her and Thomas Doyle. I don't know what happened, but it happened when Michael was a child. So it's possible that he actually did think his mother was dead. Perhaps his father had told him that, and you know, he's run with it. However, Thomas, when he remarried claiming to be a widow, was clearly lying. And Mary getting married in Victoria claiming to be a spinster was also lying. So I'm not sure if they agreed to this, if they decided that they wanted to go separate ways and they agreed to both lie about this stuff. What the hell was that? Anyway, I don't know if they had that agreement, or if they had a volatile kind of relationship and went their separate ways and just did what they had to do. But obviously those lies made it very, 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 very hard for me to find the truth. But when I did, of course, it was so rewarding. There are, of course, still quite a lot of questions though. So I still don't know why Mary came out here. Like, you know, is the caring for an elderly relative story true, or helping on a relative's farm? Like, I still can't figure out the connection to the farm. I cannot figure out why Mary and Thomas split, or like what the circumstances were. Was, you know, was he a terrible husband and she ran away? Was she flighty and a terrible wife and she just ran away? Or was it just a case of things not working out and they decided to go their separate ways? I find the last one kind of harder to believe, because I think she's left her children behind and never saw them again, and they thought her to be dead, which is a pretty extreme sort of thing to do, unless she's fleeing something, and even then you'd think she'd take her children with her. So there are still so many questions about that, which I possibly will never know. I did manage to have contact with her grandson from her second marriage, so the Coop marriage, which was amazing. I'd written some post on like a forum, like a genealogy, I think it was like Roots Chat or something like that, looking for anything to do with her, and somebody contacted me like, oh my gosh, like I've been looking for children of her first marriage, and there I was looking for children of her second marriage. So we filled each other in on a lot of information. But yeah, her grandson didn't know anything about that. She had not talked about her first family ever, probably to her children of her second marriage. So I mean, I don't even know if her second husband knew. Like, I suppose it's possible that even he didn't know she had a first marriage. Her obituary in the Victorian newspapers also is shady. It describes her as being a native of the County Galway who arrived in South Australia with her parents and spent the first 5 years in Australia with her parents before she went and married Friedrich Coop. So I don't know if that's the story that she was spinning to other people, or if someone had just done their homework wrong, but once again, there's just so many lies. There may have been perfectly good reasons for these lies. I'm not judging her. That's one thing I try not to do, and I think everyone should try not to do. Don't judge your ancestors or any of the stories you dig up, because really you don't know what their story was. You don't know what they were going through. So I certainly wouldn't judge her, but geez, she made it hard to track down. However, I am very happy that I eventually did figure out quite a lot of things. I figured out her life. I just don't know the whys. I know all the what and who now. But I will continue digging, because you never know, I might eventually find answers to some of those questions. Alright, I feel like I've rambled enough. I hope that this video makes sense and is helpful to you, because I know so many people have these brick walls in their trees, and sometimes it's just a matter of thinking outside the box a little bit. So with her, it just hadn't crossed my mind to go back to her maiden name to look for a marriage in a different state, or to follow this other path. Like, just remember that records can have false information on them. Sometimes they lied to protect themselves, or, you know, so if you've got someone who goes missing, it can just be that they've changed their name, or they've, you know, fibbed on a record, or somebody else has. So I actually do have I have another very similar case in my tree of another, now what is she, maybe my 3 times great grandmother, who once again just fell off the charts. Like, I don't know where she is. And I still have not been able to locate her. She certainly didn't go back to her maiden name, at least not as far as I can see, but she must have changed her name somehow because she did disappear, so. But yeah, perhaps this can help you in your research. Maybe remember to try different things, try going back to maiden names, try looking for other surnames or in other states. Like, remember that people, it wasn't as easy to just get divorced or something back then, so sometimes they pretended to be widowed, sometimes they went back to their maiden name and pretended to be a spinster or a bachelor in the case of a man. So yeah, all right. I'm sure I've tangled myself up. Her story always gets me tied up in knots. But it's a really good one and I hope that you enjoyed it. So I will leave this video here. Do let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts or suggestions, or if you've had similar sort of brick walls in your tree, or elusive ancestors like this. And make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you soon in my next video. Bye guys.